If you're competitive in games like Overwatch, Pubg, or Rainbow Six Siege and are looking for an advantage with sound, check out the PC37X gaming headset from Mastrop. The PC37X is a custom gaming headset designed with comfort and performance in mind. The plush ear cups and headband in combination with a crystal clear noise-canceling microphone makes marathon gaming sessions a breeze. Check out the link in the description below and get instant shipping from Mastrop today. Hey y'all, Moses here. In this video I'm going to be covering some of the mistakes I see players make in the various game modes of Pubg. The purpose of this video is to understand what to avoid rather than me telling you how to play. At this stage, the player base in Pubg has matured to a point where we are going to be covering more advanced topics in these guides, as for the most part I think the basics have been covered in previous videos. So with that said, let's get started. 1. Pairing weapons inefficiently. Weapon combinations in Pubg are extremely important. When I'm in a game and I come across someone who has chosen to run with a suboptimal set of guns, they can be easy to exploit. The weapon balance patch has made SMGs much more popular, and DMRs have risen to prominence as well. The key to selecting the right weapons is being prepared for as many situations as possible. Using the UMP and Kar 98 is probably the closest you can get to an overall effective weapon combination for an SMG and a bolt-action rifle, but leaves you with some gaps about 150 meters, which would be the high end of mid-range engagements. Essentially what you want to avoid is putting yourself in a situation where you are unable to deal with a specific type of gunfight. Say you really like the Vector and want to pair it with the M24. The slow bullet speed of the Vector means that any engagement beyond 75 meters, especially with a moving target, is going to be more difficult than with an AR or even with the faster 9mm from the UMP. That means you'll have to rely on skill shots with the M24 to deal damage. If your target has a DMR or an assault rifle, they can put pressure on you from ranges that you can't easily deal with. There are many situations where Vector and M24 would be just fine, but in the game of averages you want to select weapons that are effective everywhere. Some examples would be the AK and the SKS. You get ammo synergy, precision at medium and long range, and up-close firepower. If SMGs are really your preference, I would recommend pairing your SMG with a gun like the Mini 14, which again has precision at any distance, and benefits from high bullet speed, which will make medium-range trades trend in your favor. One other thing I'd like to tack on to this first point is being aware when it's time to trade out your weapons depending on the game situation. If you're being pushed into a city ending, the S12K or double barrel may serve you better than the sniper rifle you've been using all game. Crate weapons can also be deceiving when it comes to pairing your weapons effectively. The Groza received a nerf from the balance patch and is essentially closer to an SMG at medium distance than it is an AR. I will often seriously consider taking the AK over the Groza due to this nerf. My rule is to replace like for like with crate weapons. If I have an M4, then I'll take the M249 because it's easy to swap. But if I have an M4 and a Kar 98, I'll leave the Groza behind due to its issue in the mid-range. 2. Bad looting habits. There is no easier kill in Pubg than watching someone win a gunfight and then immediately run over to a loot box and lay down on top of it. At this stage, most players should be used to carrying extra utility around, i.e. smoke grenades, flashbangs, etc. There is zero harm in throwing a smoke grenade on a loot box in the open if you absolutely need to loot it right away. The habit of running directly to a loot box after a kill is also a bit of a bad habit. Take a look around to see if anybody has a vantage point where they can see you. Gunfire attracts players like nothing else in this game, so try and take a moment to either throw a smoke grenade to where you're going to loot, or at least do a lap to scout the area. With level 3 helmets being reserved to crates only, drops are more contested than ever. Crashing directly onto crates that have already hit the ground is a good way to get ambushed and murdered by a player who is just a bit faster than you. If you can't get to a drop as it lands, I would highly recommend driving past the area to scout for enemies, and then driving past the crate to see if you can spot any discarded items. This may seem simple, but in many instances I've made it to a crate just to have someone arrive in a vehicle just a short time after, only to be obliterated by my M249. I've also been on the receiving end of this a few times. It's essential to have a vehicle when going for crates because grabbing the loot and getting away from it as quickly as possible will increase your survival chances tremendously. The last part of this one may upset the more passive players, but one bad looting habit I've seen is dropping into non-populated areas. When I say non-populated, I mean single groups of buildings that are far from hotspots on the map. I'm not suggesting hot drops every game, but choose areas that are somewhat contested. I've always said that the best way to get looted is to take down a player who is collecting all the good stuff for you. But if you drop alone in some abandoned area of the map, you're only extending your loot phase later while other players are getting geared faster. This strategy will put pressure on your supplies in the mid-game and force you into looting situations later in rounds, which can be frustrating and often fatal. 3. Mishandling grenades. This one is a bit of a quick hit, but grenade skill and etiquette, for the lack of a better word, is a very important part of advancing as a player. All the grenades are now useful in PUBG, with the flashbang getting buffed with a larger effective radius and visual indicators that will show when a player is blinded. Throwing uninformed grenades is a major mistake I see players make, especially in the endgame. If you aren't aware of where a player is, and there are more than 2 spots where they could potentially be, it's a good idea to hold on to your grenades until you get more information. On many different occasions, I've found myself in an endgame situation with very little information about where my enemies are, just to have someone start throwing grenades. Unless the grenades are accurate by some random chance, I'm essentially being informed of the fact that A, my enemy has no idea where I am, and B, I now know where my enemy is based on the trajectory of their grenades. Those are 2 very powerful advantages to hand to your opponent, so keep that in mind before you start chucking grenades everywhere. The other thing I see a lot is predictable responses to incoming grenades. There is no more terrifying feeling than hearing a grenade land right next to you. Everyone's first response, including my own, is to immediately flee out of cover, which is exactly what your opponent wants. Something I learned from watching a Wacky Jackie video, which I've linked down below, was that you can render grenades useless by simply putting the grenade out of your direct line of sight. All that means is you need to put the grenade in a position where it can't see you. That could mean putting yourself on the other side of your cover or even on the other side of a signpost. That's right, a signpost. This is a bit harder with tree cover because the line of sight arc might still catch you. One good way to avoid getting caught by grenades is anticipation. If you take cover close to an enemy that can follow up with a grenade, don't just sit there and wait for them. Immediately look to reposition or anticipate a flanking route. This is easier said than done, so just do your best and don't give out information for free. 4. Selecting weak positions. There are a few common misconceptions related to what makes a firing position strong in PUBG. The first is that being as high as possible is a good thing, or that when the last circle lands on the house you're camping that you're going to win the game. In my opinion, the best firing positions are the ones that have the fewest flanking routes and the ones that offer you flexibility of vision and movement. High ground positions like hilltops and roofs do not qualify in every instance as the best possible position. If you're in a mid-game situation where there are multiple players alive, standing atop a hill and shooting at everything you see is a good way to get flanked. If you're going to use a position like this, you have to constantly be looking around for flanking enemies. It's very easy to get behind someone on a hilltop considering how many different routes there are to get there. The same can be said with building cover to an extent where it can be a blessing and a curse. Buildings provide possibly the best hard cover in the game, but as the game progresses, building cover will become less viable. If you're the type to spend most of your time indoors, consider that if you're in a top 5 situation with building cover, everybody with a lick of game sense knows exactly where you are and are aiming at your windows. This will make engaging enemies more difficult, and when the time comes where you're forced out of that cover, the limited visibility and audio information you've been receiving will make exiting that building very dangerous. This type of advice can be very situational, mind you. Sometimes that building cover will secure a victory, but other times players will simply hold on to it for just a bit too long and telegraph their position to everybody. My favorite type of cover is the outdoor, slightly elevated position with multiple options for peeking and movement. Because I stay so active while playing, I need to be able to get around my position and check multiple angles quickly. Some good examples of this are rocky areas, natural dips in the terrain, and small ridges. 5. Re-peeking snipers. This last one is going to be really simple, but it's something I still do from time to time and see enemy players do over and over again. Kar 98s and M24s are scary things. And even though you might think that you're faster than your enemies, predictably re-peeking an angle that's being held by a guy with a sniper rifle is more often than not going to mean the end of your round. Don't do it. Either reposition, find a new angle, or switch to your primary weapon and try to pressure your enemy off their angle long enough to do the previous 2 things. Level 3 helmets may have taught us some bad habits when it comes to sniper battles, but now that level 3 helmets are significantly more rare, it's time to tighten up those habits and make yourself less of a target. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it, leave a like down below. If you have any feedback or any additional tips of your own, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/wtfmoses and on Twitter at wtfmoses. Again, thank you for taking the time to watch this, and until next time, I'll see you out there.